Hey guys, welcome back to the Porthole Party. In this installment we're going to talk a bit about the different picture tube types you might encounter in these porthole sets. If you've been watching the series, you've seen me do some that had glass picture tubes, some that had metal picture tubes, in several different sizes and different deflection angles. If ideally you get one that's glass. They made 10 and 12 inch sets that used all glass CRTs, and I'm currently working on one that blonde has a 12 LP4 common. If it's bad, I can get a replacement. You could get a replacement. I'm not saying you could just hop onto eBay and order one, but if you ask around, if you're patient, you shop around, because all the other brands used an Admiral, RCA, Motorola. You might have to part out a set to get one, but they are relatively plentiful. 10 BP4, the workhorse, the 10-inch picture tube that was used for since 46 to 1950, basically. Lots of sets used them. Pretty readily available. Again, you know, in terms of vintage black and white picture tubes. Then we get into these. These have a metal cone. So this is conventional glass neck, same base, 12-pin base, pin out, used in so many of the early black and white picture tubes. When we get to this little seam here, from here to the front lip is metal, and it goes to the high voltage. There's no little button you clip on. This entire thing connects to the high voltage, which would be about 12,000 volts. Now there's three distinct 16-inch metal cone picture types that have three different deflection angles. The first one introduced was the 16 AP4, which had the same 54-degree deflection angle as those early glass types, the 10 BP4, 12 LP4 I just mentioned. I'm not sure Zenith ever used those. I think this is the one they use. So if you saw my recent video on the Stratosphere that a customer dropped off, that used one of these, the 16 EP4. And I dug up the original ad for it, and they were really crowing about it as that was their top of the line set. I think it was the biggest screen size at the time. So there are 19-inch sets, a 19 AP4. I don't have any Zenith portholes with a 19-inch screen, but they exist, and I think they came out around the same time or shortly thereafter. And I believe that also has the 54-degree deflection angle, but this is a 60-degree deflection angle. What's a deflection angle? I mean the angle of this cone, basically. It has to do with the yoke and how it deflects the electron beam. They're not interchangeable. You can't take a 54-degree yoke and put it on a 60-degree or 70-degree or 90-degree CRT. Well, there being some issues, like you won't get full width or full height, or things will be a little distorted. So but also physically mounting them in the set. Different length, different mounting angles, brackets and whatnot. So, there was the original 16 AP4, 54-degree like all the other early glass types. Then there's this oddball, because 60 is not much more than 54. I believe only Zenith used it, and used it for a short time, because shortly thereafter it came out the 16 GP4, which is 70 degrees, which became common deflection angle for a few years before the things jumped to 90 degrees. And I don't think there was ever a 90-degree metal cone picture tube. I could be wrong about that, but I don't think I have. So you got the three 16s. You got the 54, the 60, and the 70. This is the 60. Only Zenith used them. They had a CRT maker, Rowland, that was nearby. They eventually bought them out, but at the time this was made, I think they were still independent, but they made them for Zenith to order, I imagine. Porthole sets are popular with collectors. These tend to go bad, so the supply of replacements is dried up. I don't think I've ever seen one for sale. Why do they go bad? Well, of course, picture tubes just go bad from being used a lot. But these particular, the metal glass seal here, and then there's a metal glass seal around the front, they can leak air. I think maybe it's a little bit overblown as to how prevalent it is. I think I've encountered one or two that have gone to air, but most I've tested have not gone to air. But I've tested some that are fairly weak. I think just because the sets were used a lot and they got worn out and they were never replaced. So, why am I going on about this at length? So, as if you've seen, all the sets I've been working on, the customer sets have been dropped off, they all tested good. Well, I have a set that we will see shortly that has a bad 16 EP4. Now, I got it years ago. It's the only Porthole set that I ever got until this recent batch. I got it 10 years ago or so, and I've done nothing with it. Partly because the picture tube was essentially dead. Now, when I got it, I was not as knowledgeable about these sets as I am now, and I didn't have quite as good as equipment as I have now, so we'll beat on it. We'll try to rejuvenate it and whatnot, but I did 10 years ago, and I recall I was able to eke something out of it, but nothing great. Then we get to this. So what is this? Where did this come from? Well, a few years after I got that Porthole set, I was at an estate sale because they advertised they had some vintage TVs. Oh, yeah, they did. And I picked up 2 or 3 there. I'm trying to remember what I got there. I know I got a Philco blonde set that I don't think I've ever shown. It's in my storage space. It's part of the 50T series, 50T 1403, I think. And a pretty blonde cabinet with a green screen bezel. It'll get restored. I think that's where maybe I got my Stromberg Carlson TC10. But I went poking around the garage, and oh yeah, now I remember I found a tabletop black Bakelite 10-inch set, cool little TV, and they had a chassis with this picture tube installed in it. I think it's the same chassis, the top chassis that's in my set, and I believe I have it out in the garage, but I took the picture tube out a long time ago, and it's been in storage. I just went to my storage locker earlier today and retrieved it. The last time I tested it, it tested good. Now that was 7, 8 years ago, so we're going to test this again right now. If this is good, it's going to go in my set. If it's bad, well, then we have to think about options. Alrighty, so why do I have these towels down, by the way? Because it's a very precious CRT, and I want to provide some additional padding for it. Alright, I got on my B&K 440, which I know is conservative, so if we just even get into the edge of green, good, I know it'll be fine. So, 6.3, we should be good to go. Lighting up, so they're going to wiggle us a little bit. Got some kind of bright lights going on here for filming, so it's a little hard to see. There we go. I was getting nervous there for a second. Okay, the filament's lighting up. So while that's warming up, options. What would your options be if you have a Zenith Porthole set? Ooh, that's good. Both of these to light up. What would your options be if you had a dud? Well, you can hope like you get lucky like I do and go to a garage or estate sale. It'll just be one sitting in the garage. You can ask the community. You can place a want to buy ad. But reality is I think you're going to have a very, very, very hard, if not impossible, time finding one. So what could you replace it with? So there's a 16 GP4, which is a bit more common. Different deflection angle, and also it's shorter, so you'd have to modify the set to take it. The yoke might work okay with it, or you might be able to heat up the yoke with a heat gun and deform it a little bit, or we swap out the yoke with something that has the right deflection angle. I personally have not done it. I think some other folks have. The front part should match up okay with the bezel, so I think it's possible, but it might take a little bit of clever engineering. Where did I say clever engineering? Creative, creative engineering be a better term for it. Hey, the second light's coming up. So that's one possibility. The other is to use an all-glass CRT. 16 DP4 has the oddball 60-degree deflection angle. It's all glass. That would require more extensive creative engineering to get it to fit. It's not going to have the same rim. It's going to be a conventional glass. The front's going to be very different. I don't know that it's going to fit properly into that beautiful front porthole bezel. But at least they exist. It's an option. You have to use, of course, different high voltage connection. The mounting is going to be different. More extreme would be a 16 LP4 or another 16-inch all-glass CRT with a different deflection angle, in which case you have to change a bunch of stuff. But at least it's a possibility. To get really extreme, use something like a 17-inch rectangular picture tube, in which case, yeah. The reason I mention that is that when rectangular picture tubes came out, or around 50-51, Zenith did modify some of their porthole chassis and converted them to use a rectangular picture tube and change the bezel on the cabinets, at least to be something. Otherwise, well, you have a conversation piece that's just not going to work again. Oh yeah, so yeah, the most extreme option would be, well, rebuild the picture tube. So if you have one that's a dud, you might want to hang on to it. Talk more about rebuilding in the future. So we have both lights on, so things are looking good. Let's check emissions. It's not so good, is it? No, we're less than halfway up the bad range. Now it's only been on for a couple minutes, so we're going to let it sit. It hasn't been used in a long time. Cutoff control, yeah, cutoff control works. But emissions are pretty crappy. I remember them being better. I'm going to goose this up a little bit to 7 volts and let it sit for 10-15 minutes, see what we get. Like I said, it's been years since I tested this, and this has been sitting in a climate controlled storage unit for years. I remember testing better than this. So could some air have leaked in while it's been sitting there? Yeah, maybe, but if this had really lost its vacuum, we wouldn't be getting emissions at all, and the neck would be glowing purple right now, probably. But a little bit of air might have leaked in. While we're waiting for that 16 EP4 to wake up, let's talk about this a little bit. So this is a set that I've been working on, and picture tube sure looks similar, doesn't it? Same plastic bezel around it, metal cone, but it's not an EP4. It's a GP4. Yeah, they used both. So if you see a metal cone 16-inch set, don't just assume it's an EP4 and it could be trouble. They use GP4s at the same time. Why? Supply and demand, maybe? I don't know. Maybe they were gradually phasing out the EP4s for GP4s. I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know. But this is a GP4. This tests good. I just wanted you to be aware that they used both. So if you were going to convert an EP4 to a GP4, you see it's pitch tube looks very similar, but it's shorter. So this assembly would need to move this way. I know on Admiral sets they had slots on these so they could move, but this does not. This doesn't. Oh yeah, okay, but I see this does. So the EP4 would be deeper, so the GP4 being shorter, you'd push this forward. Probably the rest would be okay. You see they got springs on some of this stuff, so you could handle a variable length. It would just come down to the yoke that's inside of this. Would the deflection angle be similar enough that it would still cover the whole picture without any problem? So we could slide this forward. And then this stuff, you might have to play around with it. These are spring-loaded screws here. This is the focus coil that needs to be at a certain spot on the neck. It might be a little different between the E and the G, so you might need to manipulate this stuff a little bit. This is welded to this, so you can't move this whole thing. I think that'd be it. This stuff can all, I mean, it's just the socket for it, and the iron trap magnet can move around. So, as long as you could adjust that stuff. The front screen, the bezel should be exactly the same between the E and the G. Alrighty, it's been about half an hour. I'm back down to 6.3 volts. We've got our two neon bulbs lit up very brightly. Emissions, we're in the green. Check cutoff. Yep, great cutoff. Let's put it on the line. Go back to check emissions. Well into the green. As I say, with this device, I think pretty sure the calibration's off because I never get much higher than this. So it's where it pays to know your equipment and be familiar with how it operates. Finally, let's do a life test. That cuts the power to the filament. It'll get dimmer. The idea being if it's a really strong electron gun, we'll still get good emissions. It's dropping. I'm not concerned. I don't expect it to test like new, but that will produce a great image. That's a lot better than where we started, deep in the red. That's about as good as it gets with this tester, so fantastic. I'm starting to get a little nervous there, I admit, but we are good. We are good. So this picture tube will be going in my